Welcome to Setting the Bar. I am Maddie Powers. I'm the rock. I'm the rock of this family. No, I am the marketing manager from Workbar.
I'm Sarah Travers, the CEO of Workbar.
And we are here with Bennett Collen, the co-founder and CEO of Endstate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We are so excited to have you. As you may or may not already know, we love a Boston-based business, Boston-based startup, a Boston success story. That is kind of what Workbar is. Well, we are. We are a Boston-based success story.
Yeah. We were a Boston-based startup company.
That's true.
Yeah.
So we've done it all by now. So we are so excited to pick your brain about what Endstate is doing. And do you want to give us the quick elevator pitch for Endstate? What do you guys do?
Sure. Endstate exists to connect fans to products. And so our thesis really is that products should gain deeper meaning over time instead of being something that's ephemeral and is used a day, a week, a month. We think that products really have deeper meaning and should have deeper meaning. Something we sort of steal from the luxury industry, right? Where it's built to last and it has this deeper storytelling behind it. And the way that we think that should manifest itself is through technology. So we embed chips into physical products, so primarily footwear and apparel, that is either designed in-house by our world-class design team, led by my co-founder, Stephanie Howard, or we embed chips into existing product lines for our partners. And the idea is to create this connective tissue between the physical products and the digital experiences that everyone has, right? Because all of our fandom interaction with the athletes, artists, musicians that we love happens online, right? Through their social profiles, through chat forums, through reading articles. It's all digital.
Right.
And so we think that there should be connective tissue between that and the physical products and the offline experiences.
So interesting. Who are some of the brands that you've worked with? I know you guys have your own line and we want to hear a lot more about that, but some of the brands that you've just put chips into.
Yeah, so I'm a walking billboard right now.
Love it,
so
you gotta be.
We recently did a collaboration with an IndyCar racing team called Juncos Hollinger. So we are chipping all of their official apparel and merchandise for the 2024 season. And so I've got their hat on right now. It's got their branding here, but all their apparel has this Endstate chip on the side. And when you tap it, it gets you things like exclusive content. So they're really creative in what that means. So there's racing briefs from the drivers. So they'll interview the drivers and you can only get it through the chip. Or in-person access to events. So they're going to do an event at the Indy 500. And again, their fans who are big enough fans who have bought their merchandise and engaged with the team then use this product as a ticket to the event that's going to be happening, right? And you're again validated through the chip. So they've been really creative in thinking through different ways to use the tech. The other one that I'm the walking billboard for is the Museum of Fine Art in Boston, which we're doing a collaboration with. Launches this Friday, which will be March 22nd.
Okay.
And we did a capsule collection of 2 t-shirts, 2 hoodies, and a custom pair of sneakers. And the idea is that we leveraged some of the Korean art in the MFA's collection in some of the designs. So this is called the Happy Buddha painting. This is a piece in the MFA's collection. And when you buy this t-shirt, there's a chip on it. It gets you VIP access to the late night, which is an event the MFA does after the museum is closed to launch the exhibit. It gets you exclusive coverage of an interview that we did with the artist behind this piece because he's still a living artist.
Yep.
And then it also gets you access to, the footwear gets you access to a curated tour of the Korean art exhibition with the museum curator. So again, it's this idea of connecting the physical product to these experiences that are meaningful for the communities that we're creating the products for.
Now, so let's focus, I love the IndyCar stuff, but let's focus a little bit on the MFA just as a Boston, sort of 2 Boston brands coming together. How are you going after like the MFA? How did that partnership even come up? Like, what does that look like?
That happened organically, and it's a little bit of a thanks to my first company and sort of the networks that I established there.
Dive into that a little bit too, because
you have such
you have such an interesting background that you peel it back and where you are today, it kind of like makes sense. But it's very Boston to me, right?
Yeah.
So it's very sort of, you started a company back in, what was it, like 2015, 2000?
14,
okay, 14, and you have an exit a short time later to GoDaddy. You, on the side, you're a professor at BC. Like, you have a very cool background. So I don't want you to, I'd love to get more into sort of where you are now, but definitely give us sort of the highlights, and especially if that leads us on to how the MFA collaboration comes up. Because to me, that's what's like super interesting about being in Boston, about how all of this can sort of center around the ecosystem that we have here in the city.
Yeah, and just to give a little teaser, I'll do a callback later. So the person at the MFA who I connected with is the head of IP and licensing.
Oh,
right?
interesting.
Okay.
My first company, Cognate, was a trademark protection platform where we had a software product that was a vault. So people could put proof of use of their intellectual property in this vault. So then if they ever needed to enforce or protect their trademark rights, they would be able to have this really secure record of when, where, and how their marks were being used. And actually, fun story, the first time that I did sort of a public promotion of this product, it was at a Workbar.
Oh my God, tell me everything. What?
So cool.
So we did this Workbar event where like we sponsored it. We like bought the pizza and drinks.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, what better place to have a bunch of people who are looking to protect their IP rights and startups who are just sort of thinking about IP formation and protecting IP. So we did that, and I gave my little pitch about what Cognate did. And it was like one of the very first public-facing things we did.
That is awesome.
Is that the one over in Cambridge?
Oh my gosh, we used to do a lot of, like, we had Shark Tank come back then. We used to do a lot of pitches, and that's really, really awesome.
That's so cool. I feel like we need to
that's like
bring
Boston
it
mystery.
back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bring it back, and we'll do one with Endstate.
Yes.
Bring it full circle.
That would be fun. I'm down for that.
Yes.
But so that was the company.
Okay.
And another Boston tie was we sort of had this product that had some decent traction, but we were sort of missing a hook. And a lot of the feedback we would get is, why is it different to have this in your database versus me just having like a file on my computer? And, you know, we had answers about, you know, third-party neutrality and trust, and, you know, you can verify and audits. But then my tech partner and I went to a talk at MIT on this new thing called the Ethereum blockchain in 2015. And we sort of looked at each other, and they said, you can make time-stamped, tamper-proof records that you can't change even if you want to.
Yeah.
We just sort of looked at each other and said, okay, this is a really compelling angle that we can take, and, you know, would add another dynamic layer to our product if we can say, you know, this proof of use documentation is protected by the Ethereum blockchain. Wow. So we went full in on the blockchain.
Yeah.
You know, we learned how to write our own smart contract library, and essentially what we did was turn trademarks into NFTs. And this was before ERC 721 was even defined. Like, no one knew what an NFT was. We just knew this isn't like a token. This is a unique asset with its own property that's a one of one, but we want that represented on the blockchain. So long story short, our timing was really good in adopting blockchain. We had some pretty good traction with some law firms, some individual companies, and then we did a small partnership with a couple of domain name registrars, and I ended up getting in touch with GoDaddy and doing a trial partnership with them.
Yeah.
That went well, and after, you know, some discussions on what the future of the partnership could look like, they suggested, you know, well, what would happen if we just brought you in-house and acquired the company? And so then that was another, you know, 6-month process, which could probably be a podcast unto itself.
I bet. So tell me now, dive deeper into how it happened with the MFA.
Okay, so Deborah LeKind, who's
our
counterpart there, is the head of IP and licensing. So we had been connected and telling her a little bit about what we do. And she was like, that's really fascinating. Is there anything we can do with the MFA? And this is a conversation that happened over the course of a year plus. And we were sort of looking for opportunities for exhibitions that they were bringing in to say, okay, would this match up? And so we first explored actually the Fashion by Sargent exhibit, which they did recently, because you thought, you know, fashion and, you know, what we do, we could draw some connections there, but wasn't a perfect fit, and the timing was a little crunched. And then at some point last year, I think around like October, she said, okay, we have this Hallyu exhibit coming along, and it's all about Korean influence on pop culture. And we thought, okay, well, this is a perfect fit, right? Because it's pop culture, it's a little bit more modern. You know, the style, the aesthetic fits really well with our brand. And then the technology can add this really compelling component to the exhibition where people who engage and buy the products have this deeper level of access into the launch of the exhibition. which we were excited about and they were very excited about. And it seems like the demographic of who's going to be interested in how you exhibit will, overlap really well with people who would be excited about, this apparel and the connection to the technology.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I have like 5 questions I want to ask off the bat on this. So, but first off, like you've mentioned Workbar, you've mentioned MIT, you've mentioned the MFA. We talk a lot at Workbar because our model is based off of the fact that Boston is probably the one city in the world that has the largest array of world-changing innovation. And why does that happen? And is it sort of special just to Boston? And as Workbar thinks a little bit about expanding outside of Boston, we're always thinking, like, how do we replicate this model? Is it too Boston? Like, it's so integrated in what exists in Boston. And when I think about what drives innovation, it's access to networking, it's access to local funding, it's access to demand, both local and global. But then there's also sort of this access to an entrepreneurial ecosystem that exists. Really, I like to think of it as primarily in Boston, but it obviously now exists out in like New York and California, maybe in Miami. We were just talking about Miami a little bit. What are the factors that you think sort of out of that like bucket of factors, right, that drive innovation that led you to where you are today? What do you think was most important if you had to pick a couple?
The thing that usually stands out to me is Boston's size. I think it's just perfectly sized.
Yeah.
Like New York is so big and overwhelming, and there's a million VCs, and there's a million startups, and there's a million events that you can go to on any given night. And then maybe in some other metro areas, maybe it's just too small. So like there's interest, and there's certainly companies doing interesting and innovative things, but maybe there's not the pool of capital or the universities or the sports teams or the cultural institutions like the MFA. I think Boston is just perfectly sized for that, right?
Yeah.
You have all the cultural institutions, you have the capital, you have the universities, and I think that, there's a magic in that just being the right size where know you can go to the important events. There's plenty of venture capital and angel investors who are, writing checks into innovative companies, but it's not so overwhelming that, you have to pick between a roster of like 500 different people with different specialties. It's kind of like there's artists talk a lot about creativity coming from constraints, right? It's like, if you give an artist a blank canvas and all of the resources and materials in the world, it's going to be, paralysis by analysis and deciding what they want to do. If you say like, you've got an 8x12 and you can only paint in the color blue with some hues, right? Like then their creativity can really come out. And I feel like with Boston, it's just like the perfect mix of the resources, but the intimacy and being able to know and have a finger on the pulse of what the resources are in Boston, what the events are in Boston, and how you can take advantage of them.
I think that's so true. I think it is. I think size does matter, and I think you're right. There is an intimacy that you feel in Boston. Maddie and I were talking yesterday, and then maybe I'll let you get a question in, Maddie.
Sure, yeah.
About the Curie.io billboard on the Mass Pike. Which is they are trying to, and there was a Boston Globe article about it. Scott Kirshner wrote, I think yesterday or the day before, about how they're trying to pitch their VC funding to life science companies. And so Maddie and I were having a conversation. I'll let you.
Yeah, it's almost like they're crowdsourcing the next therapeutic treatment. Have you seen those billboards?
No.
Yeah.
They're on the Pike. I'm sure there are other places too, but it's Curie.bio. Bio. And they're basically saying, like, if you have a therapeutic idea or a drug idea, we want to fund it. And it caught my eye because I have some interest in that type of thing. But we were talking about it as like in the city and sort of crowdsourcing these little technical aspects that used to be really unattainable, unachievable. Like if you weren't kind of born and raised in pharma or at MIT, you wouldn't have access to these rooms, let's just say. You wouldn't have a seat at the table. And now with technology, and I mean...
Yeah, and I mean, a little, it's just an interesting way to advertise like a venture capitalist fund. And so a little bit of this in the Boston Globe article went into Boston is now sort of this life science hub. That's kind of what we're known for now. That's where a lot of this VC money goes to. I know for Endstate, you raised a seed fund, was maybe 1 or 2 years ago, I think, when I was reading your bio, mainly from technology-driven venture capitalists.
Yeah.
Do you think that that is still a world that exists in Boston that is attractive for early stage startup companies to come and sort of build their businesses here? Do you think that that's evolved over the past few years? What do you think about sort of the changing dynamics of access to capital for early stage startups right now?
Yeah, I mean, over the past 10 years, it's definitely gotten easier. You know, if you look at a macro level, right, there's more rounds getting done, there's more dollars getting invested, there's more funds that are popping up, there's more LPs that are looking to invest into funds, you know, university endowments, right, like big institutional players then invest in these funds, which then deploy checks into startups. So it has become easier to raise money, but that doesn't mean it's easy to raise money, right? There's still
you still got to do the work.
You still have to do the work, but there's also then things like fund cycle timing, like for an individual fund and, you know, their individual thesis. And then, you know, macro trends, like when we raised, thankfully in 2022, it was very favorable for tech startups, right? Like there was a lot of money on the sidelines that was looking to come in, and, you know, there were a lot of deals getting done. And then, you know, that was nothing that I saw like with great foresight as an entrepreneur. This was a good time to raise money. It just so happened to be in our company's life cycle when it was the right time. And then, you know, 2 years later, a year and a half later, it was really tough, right? Like there was still a lot of money on the sidelines, but deal terms became less favorable, smaller checks, tougher valuations, right? It just, it's still very difficult to map, but on the whole, there is a lot more venture dollars looking for deals than there used to be in the past.
So you would still encourage startup companies to stay in Massachusetts, stay in Boston. There's plenty of access to funding. It's not just going over to the life science companies that are sort of the hot thing.
Yeah, and I think COVID saw, you know, a disbursement of the concentration in Silicon Valley, right? And now there's little hubs all over the place. Austin, Miami, of course, New York has a vibrant scene, you know, Chicago, you know, even some places like in upstate New York and like Rochester have seen some really interesting growth in their tech scene. So I think now more than ever, it's not as important to be in any particular geographic location. Obviously, it's company specific, right? Some companies are going to see a benefit to being in a specific area, but if you're sort of a software company or a tech company that doesn't have any particular geographic needs, I don't think there's any reason to go to one particular city anymore.
Yeah, that's great.
Except definitely come to Boston.
Yeah,
except for Boston. One of the things that I think is really interesting about what you're doing right now is I know you grew up as a self-proclaimed sneakerhead, and I know plenty of sneakerheads. And in like the collectible world, a lot of times you get a collectible or get a pair of sneakers or like a limited edition, and it sits in a box or on a shelf. And I think what's really cool about what you guys are doing is you're making it part of the kind of day-to-day life, part of somebody's lifestyle. And it is also is a physical ticket. So you're getting these sneakers and it is, you know, an NFT. You're getting this item and it is sometimes limited edition depending on how you work it out. But is that something you thought about as a sneakerhead? Is that something you were like, well, I want to have a product that people are going to use in that way?
Yeah, definitely. And this is a contentious issue in the sneakerhead community, like wear them or box them, right? Like, you know, I am always on the team of wear the sneakers because they're going to fall apart over time anyway.
Right.
Like every sneakerhead has seen this video on Instagram where someone has a mint condition Jordan 3 and they drag their finger through the sole of the sneaker and it just falls away. Like, you know, it had never been worn in the box, but it just crumbles just by a finger being dragged across it, right? Because like they're meant to be worn for a few years and worn hard, and then, you know, they weren't designed to last forever. So, you know, I just think you should wear your sneakers and enjoy them. But that is personal, right? I know the other side of the story. But the idea for us is, what if we could superimpose experiences onto these physical products, right? And connect the way that we engage with the athletes, artists, musicians, museums, racing teams that we love, and connect that to the physical products that represent our fandom of those entities.
Right.
And what we found is that it deepens customer engagement, it protects brand authenticity. It can actually be a revenue driver for these brands because the CMO of the racing team tells us like they think of this as a proprietary messaging platform, right? It's like I can push content to someone who owns this particular product, who's scanned this number of times or has attended this number of events, super targeted offer to them at the push of a button, and it's not coming up in a crowded Instagram feed or crowded inbox, email or text inbox. It's happening through an intentional scan, that the customer is like making a choice to engage with the product, right? So it just creates this real intimacy with the product and the entity that you're collaborating with, and it creates a two-way street for the fan too, right? Because I, as a fan, now that I've bought this product, feel like it should grant me some special status over just anyone who can go to the public Instagram page and see whatever we're doing to promote. This is, hey, welcome into the inner circle, right? You're supporting us, now we're supporting you. You bought our product, you're showing up to our events, that now gets you this deeper access into our ecosystem.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's like building a really niche, intimate, like you said, community. And they can be anywhere, but they're part of a select group. I think that obviously community is something we talk about at Workbar a lot. It's a huge part of what we do. And I love that.
You're like validating that somebody's a real true fan, right? Like it's like we have, I call them the Workbar OG members. They've been there for 10 years. They want anybody at Workbar to know that they have been there for 10 years. They want like some sort of, and I love all of you guys if you listen to this, but they want some sort of like status that says I've been here. And so they want that type of validation. This almost gives the fans validation that they're like, well, I get access to all of this really cool experience-driven, whether it's content or actual real experiences that they get. I feel like that would offer so much validation as a fan that other people aren't getting.
That's exactly right. And the beauty of embedding the chip into the product is that the chip sort of quantifies that sentimental value or their interaction with the community, right? So now the product says, okay, this person has scanned the chip this many times or attended these events, right? And then, the product inherits that history. And you can do things like give either digital or physical badges to say, hey, you've, attended 10 races this season, right? Here's this patch that you can sew on to your jacket or your windbreaker that shows that you achieved this status within the community. It's like, earning status on an airline. Right? And there's a reason why those programs exist. It's because, the people who are your most loyal customers should have greater benefit than to people who are price shopping or fly casually, right? Like you want to encourage the people to always engage with your company and your product, and the people who are doing that anyway because they're fans then can feel more seen once they have that status conferred onto them.
So when we think about collaborators that we partner with, that Workbar partners with, we are very sort of conscious of brand identity and making sure that the collaborator fits within the Workbar brand identity. Who is in charge of like your strategy for how you go out and get collaborators, and how is it a good fit for Endstate, and how is it a good fit for the people that you guys sort of handpick?
Yeah, I mean, that's our business development team. So it's myself and then our head of business development and head of growth. We sort of have a pipeline of companies, brands, teams, individuals that we think could be a good fit for Endstate, and then we reach out and explore opportunities where we think there might be a good fit. But really the lens that we're looking through is, does this entity have a passionate fan base that we can engage through an exceptionally designed product, right? And sometimes that's a product that they already have that exists that we're just sort of embedding our chips in, and sometimes it's a product that we design ourselves from scratch. But the common denominator is there that fan base, and it doesn't have to be the world's biggest fan base, but is there going to be a receptive audience to us bringing this product to life and then having it be the ticket to the inner circle? Is there, a fan base that's going to appreciate something like a private curated tour of the of the Hallyu exhibition, right? Is there going to be, diehard race fans who are watching week in, week out who would appreciate a preview of the upcoming race from one of the drivers that they're not seeing anywhere else? And if the answer is yes, then it's a potential fit.
It's a potential fit. Do you have a favorite? or it's like work, when people say that to me about my work, they're all my children. I love them equally.
Yeah.
But do you have like a handful of favorite collaborators that you worked with?
I'll tell you my favorite if you tell me your favorite
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I love them all equally.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think that's part of the thing. One of the things that I really enjoy about Endstate is that we get to work with such an interesting and diverse set of entities, right, that have these passionate fans and like get to embed ourselves and learn more about Korean pop culture and IndyCar racing and, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles and, you know, all of the different collaborations that we've done sort of takes us into different little pockets of really passionate fandom. And that's one of the things I enjoy most about it.
Who has the craziest group of fans?
It's tough to beat Eagles fans.
Is that right? Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah, me
After
too.
the whole Jason Kelsey, right?
Yeah, they've always been crazy.
Yeah.
Something that I heard you talk about on another podcast was kind of the future of how you guys want to incorporate AR and VR. Is that close on the horizon? Is that a future strategy plan? And how are you planning to do that with kind of the existing model at Endstate?
Yeah, so for a few of our existing drops, we actually incorporate an AR model of the sneaker. So there was a QR code on the side of the sneaker, and that would pop up an AR model of the sneaker. It was more of like a novelty, but you could just sort of see it in space and play with it. And, you know, you could blow it up huge and place it on the field at Fenway Park or whatever. And, you know, I think like a lot of experiences, and this was 2 years ago, right? And state of the art actually has come a long way since then. But like a lot of those experiences at the time, it was more of a novelty than something that like, you know, I'm incorporating that has real utility or something that was a fully immersive experience. But to me, one of the things that's really excited about this is that once you have the connective tissue between the physical and the digital, you can start to have products that you own in the real world have a counterpart in the digital world, right? So we can see a future where people are hanging out in, you know, the Apple metaverse or the Meta metaverse or whatever, you know, Fortnite, whatever environment people are hanging out in. If they own a physical product, they can claim and wear the corresponding digital counterpart in those environments. And just like, you know, when I go to the grocery store, I don't have to change into like the grocery store approved outfit, right? Like when I go from Meta to, you know, Apple, I'm not going to have to change my outfit. I think there's going to be some sort of persistent digital wardrobe that people can bring from place to place. And what we like about that is we think the real world is just going to be one of those integrations, right? I have this real world jacket that I can then wear in Meta, and I can wear in Fortnite, and I can wear it in Apple.
Okay, so now in 2000, and when was it? It was before you, 2022 maybe, I had set, like sitting down doing my company goals for the year. It was like at least 2 years ago. I really wanted to stretch our sort of operational boundaries, and I said I want sort of two things when I think about the next year in front of us. I want to open a Workbar in the metaverse, and I really like the idea of our members being able to interact and engage with the community sort of out in the digital world. And then I wanted to pay our employees or give them the option to be paid in crypto, in some sort of like digital currency. Neither of those things happened, but as I say to Maddie, I don't think of myself as a failure I think I'm just way ahead of my time, right? And so how far ahead of my time do you think I am?
I mean, if you're paid in crypto in 2022, we'd probably be doing pretty well right now.
Yeah,
if you're paid in Bitcoin.
Should have done it.
No to that.
Yeah, I'll tell you who said no after we're off the air. Yeah.
Whoever it is, we're coming for you.
Yeah, and you know, everybody was like, oh, Sarah's
crazy.
Being Sarah.
Yeah.
But you know what? They said that too when you wanted to move Workbar to the suburbs, and it worked out. So she's just generally ahead of her time.
How do you guys work right now? What is and do you guys ever work across, like in the virtual world? We've done a little bit like on Facebook Horizons and things like that. You know, back in the day with my big, what were those called?
Quest.
Yeah. And now, of course, I want to be the first person that does it with my Apple Vision Pros. But how do you guys work?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a few activations in the metaverse. There's one that's a blockchain-based ecosystem called Decentraland, and we've got like a little plot there in the fashion district, and we've built out, you know, this museum essentially that categorizes our drops, and that people can actually wear some of the sneakers in Decentraland because there is a corresponding NFT. So we're approved. We had to be approved by the Decentraland DAO to say like, yes, this is worthy of being wearable in Decentraland. So we went through that process, but there hasn't been a ton of activity there recently.
Right.
We did another platform called Monaverse, and we actually built out like little shrines to a bunch of our collaborators. So for like Devonte Smith, we had this statue of Devonte where he was holding the shoe.
That's
and
cool.
then we did one for this company called Blit Maps that we did a sneaker for. But it hasn't been something that we've really focused a lot on in the last like 6 to 8 months, just because that vision of being able to bring your digital product from place to place to place just is not there yet.
Yeah.
And each environment that you want to be in is a new build out and a new integration. Right. And I think in order for that to have real reach and have people not be frustrated by it, you either have to be enthusiast that is okay with just being in the little walled garden that you choose, which is fine. And there's a lot of really fun experiences in those walled gardens. Or I think a lot of people are going to wait until it's more of a seamless experience and you don't have to change outfits and clothes and loadouts and, be a different person, different avatar in each and every environment that you interact with.
Right. It's certainly coming because as you guys both have little kids. My kids are a little bit older, 7 and 10, but all they do is play in the metaverse. All in Minecraft and like all of
Roblox.
It's all metaverse. So it's coming.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten there yet, and I'm scared. What would you say to people who think that kind of this notion of operating in the metaverse this way is like too Black Mirror?
I think people are always scared of new technologies, and like there tends to be even a moral component when new technologies come out that people react very negatively and viscerally to them.
Right.
And I don't think that is the case. I think like any technology, some of it will be beneficial and some of it will be negative, right? I mean,
like everything.
Smartphones and social media, right? There's definitely positive aspects to it, but there's a lot of negative aspects to it as well. And I think that the metaverse and metaverse technologies are not going to be any different, right? Some people are going to find out really beneficial and additive ways to use it, right? That it's going to be additive to their lives, and then others are going to go overboard and could lead to depression and people who are on it too much, but I don't think it's much different to our current technologies in that regard.
So speaking of technology, Maddie and I, again, were talking about this the other day, how there's a Massachusetts-based company that is reviving the woolly mammoth, right? They're adding technology to, what is it called?
It's
de-extinction methods. And so, I mean, you added technology to sneakers. Now it seems like a lot of other companies sort of have gotten into adding NFTs and technology to sneakers. But where do you see like the biggest growth opportunity? Is it in the experiences? Is it in the, like, where do you, when you think of sort of the next couple of years, where do you think you guys have the most opportunity to impact your end users' experience, life?
For us, it's the powered by Endstate opportunities, right? So going to other brands that have existing fans and helping them create that deeper connective tissue and deepen the engagement and create more intimate and rewarding experiences for the fans that they have. Because, we started out building it for ourselves and then realized somewhere along the way, this could have a lot of impact for other brands, and we shouldn't just be limiting it to our own products. We should be building a platform that other people can use to create these experiences and connections for their fans. And so for us, that's the biggest area of growth and emphasis moving forward. Is that
right?
Yeah.
But your sneakers are pretty awesome.
Appreciate that. I can't take any credit for that
really
personally.
Awesome.
That's all Stephanie and Dave on our design team. But
and Stephanie is Boston. She was at New Balance and Nike. I know, I saw her resume and it was like mind-blowing. What a superstar she is. But so she was based in Boston as well? And you guys,
So she worked at all the big names. So she was design director at New Balance and Nike. She designed some really famous sneaker silhouettes like the New Balance 850, the Nike Air Max Verona. And then she had a long consulting career as well where she consulted for VF Corporation, so Timberland, Vans, the North Face, Titleist. She did. So she's been, one of the leaders in design and performance for 20, 25 years.
Yeah, that is amazing. You guys are the real deal. You have a really good lineup.
Such a good
Appreciate
line.
that.
Yeah.
I heard you say that you got connected, that you heard about Stephanie, linked up with her on LinkedIn, and then just like bothered her until
Is that
she
right?
answered. And I love how you talk about that, because I think for people early in their careers, or if they're interested in starting a business, if they're entrepreneurial, there's that hesitancy to like be really bold and to come off as like a newbie, or feel like you can't reach out to these people who are role models to you, or advanced in their career. And what would you say to some people who, like younger people in their careers in the Boston area? Is that the move? Bother them on LinkedIn? Or what advice would you give to them to grow their company?
Although I think if Bennett bothers them on LinkedIn, you're like, oh, Belle.
Yeah, well now, but maybe back in the day.
Yeah.
No, there's definitely something to be said for persistence, right?
Yeah.
I mean, stubbornness, persistence, depending on who in my life you ask, they would probably choose one adjective over the other. But, there's something to be said for that, right? And I think to your point, a lot of times when you're younger in your career, you sort of elevate these people and these things like, okay, this email has to be perfectly well crafted, and if they don't respond, then they're clearly not interested. And the further you get on in your career, the more you realize that, you're just busy. And I think that some college students in particular go too far the other direction, where they like write an email that's like, yo,
that's
first
so
name, whatever. Right. Yeah. It's like,
that is so true.
maybe not that casual, but then I also had another college student reach out to me about a month ago, and he sent me like a very formal 3-paragraph email introducing himself. And then like we got on the call and we just had a normal conversation. It's just like, I appreciate the lengths that you went to, but you could have just sent me like a polite, concise, 2-sentence, right? So not everything has to be super buttoned up. But at the same time, you want to not be too casual. And then as long as you're being a polite pest, I don't think there's anything wrong with being persistent. And the worst they're going to do is not respond. And then you're in the same spot that you are right now.
So true.
And that you don't have a connection to them. So there's not a lot to lose, especially if you're young in your career.
Yeah, that's really good advice, though. Be persistent, not annoying, though.
Yeah, I like polite
It's a fine line.
Polite pest.
I like polite pest.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, like I have people that I'm reaching out to where I'm sort of towing that line between pest and polite. And
it never goes away,
Yeah.
no matter how successful you are. Like you always, whether you need something from somebody else, you think that Endstate or Workbar would benefit from a partnership. And so it is always that sort of, it's a good way to put it, polite pestering.
Yeah. And I think you never really know what you can come up with together until you're having the conversation. You might have an idea that they're not interested in, but then they say, oh, actually, what about this?
Like going back to Endstate and the MFA with Hal Yu. I mean, that is just such a innovative, interesting, like thought-provoking collaboration. It really is.
Very cool.
It really is very cool.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and it's a big credit to the MFA to be open to doing something so different and new. And,
you're right.
And now they get to say that they were the first to create this collection that has this embedded technology that brings people closer into the exhibition. And their marketing team has been really creative in how they're promoting that. And then even in store at the MFA, they're training the staff and the salespeople to say, hey, when you buy this shirt, it comes with this, and make sure you scan the chip. And there was a lot of work that they needed to do, and a lot of risks that they needed to take. But it's going to pay off really well.
Yeah, that opens on Friday in Boston. Yeah.
That's very
awesome.
exciting.
We'll go. We'll take a Workbar field trip.
Workbar field trip to the Hal Yu.
Well, so the late night is 8 to 1 a.m., which
we won't be going to that.
Right, but so then the next day is when the exhibition formally opens. If you want to go during
Saturday,
the day.
Maddie.
We'll do the morning tour. Well, if you don't have anything else.
Thank you so much, Bennett.
Thank you for having me.
This has been so great, and I love all the Boston connections and the Workbar.
I know.
So basically, would you say that Workbar was the key to your success?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's
I would not be where I am today without
Workbar. Without Workbar Cambridge, which, by the way, is still open.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you heard it here first.
So okay, good. All right, thanks,
amazing.
Bennett.
Thank you.
so
Appreciate it.
much.